Do you really need a big yard to start a garden in Florida? Well, think again. You can transform your balcony or small patio into this beautiful garden full of native plants and, of course, our pollinators. But how? The answer is simple. Containers. Containers are great for beginners. They tend to have fewer weeds, pests, and diseases than planting in the ground. And you have complete control over where you place it, what type of soil you use, and how much to water. Today, we're going to talk about why containers work so well here and how you can get started. I'm going to share a step-by-step guide on how to choose the right container, soil, and plants for your space. Why do containers work so well in Florida? Well, for one, we know that Florida's sandy soil is often low in nutrients, which make planting in the ground a little challenging. With containers, you can purchase all types of soils that have higher nutrients and organic matter. Second, Florida is known for its intense heat and unpredictable weather, especially during hurricane season. So using containers gives you more mobility. If your plants are getting too much sunlight, hey, you can bring them under a shelter. If there's a storm alert, you can bring them inside. And third, it saves a lot of space. That's very important since apartments, condos, and townhouses make up almost a quarter of Florida's housing, which means little or no backyard space. Luckily, containers come in all different sizes, and you can find the right fit for you. As you can see, I'm surrounded by 5 beautiful containers. Plus, once you have your containers, you can fill them with native plants. The great thing about natives is that they're perfectly suited for Florida's climate. They can adapt to heat, humidity, random cold snaps, and you guessed it, small spaces. We have over 4,700 native plant species here in Florida, which means there's plenty to choose from. You can create a mini native ecosystem with different types of shrubs, small trees, vines, wildflowers, and ground covers. These plants will provide shelter and food for pollinators, all while bringing beauty into your space. Doesn't that get you excited? Now we need to pick out our containers, our soil, and our plants. Let's get started. Here we are with Phil Andescavage, co-owner of Florida Nursery Mart in Cooper City, Florida. He's been in the plant industry for 26 years and encourages the use of native plants in your landscape. Phil, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jeannie, and welcome to Florida Nursery Mart.
Thank you. For those of us looking to create a container garden, and I know the first step will be, of course, finding the right container, and the possibilities are endless. What will be some of the most common containers you can walk us through?
We have many options to go through. Let's go explore.
Let's go. Phil, tell us what we have here.
To start off, we have glazed pottery, which is usually a heavy clay that has a glaze applied to it before it's fired. That essentially makes it non-porous at that point. So these pots do not breathe, as well as some others we're going to talk about. What's fascinating is the endless option of the colors. We can do glazes in reds and yellows and whatever your imagination.
Sort of the rainbow color you
exactly.
can get them in.
So you can match a color scheme that's in your landscape or house already. So they're very adaptable in that way.
And then some of the cons with that would be, I would imagine, weight.
So yeah, as you get into larger size pots, they do tend to get pretty heavy. And maybe a little harder to handle at that point.
To kind of move around.
Sure.
And then when it comes to cost?
They are probably also one of the more expensive ones, but overall I think a fantastic pot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's next?
So we can jump to clay or terracotta, and these are kind of the original pots that man has come up with. Clay right from the ground. It's fired. These are pretty breathable, which makes for good root systems. That will increase your watering frequency at your house.
So you have to water a little more when it comes to clay.
Sure. Okay. So in your hotter months, these will
sort of
they'll
water evaporate.
Yeah, that water will evaporate. The pot will breathe. Great for the plant. Just keep up with the watering. Both the pots I just mentioned will need a drain hole in the bottom for proper drainage.
And also another con with this type of pot is the weight of it.
Sure. When you start getting into larger pots, they become pretty difficult to handle, unless of course you're talking about plastics.
Oh, wow, and I thought that was really heavy. So let's see.
And that's why
that's actually something I can carry.
Yes, that's why they're pretty popular. So most people would assume that's a terracotta or clay pot.
I thought
and
so too.
It fools everyone. They are very functional. They're much more easy to handle.
And I do have to say that plastic containers have come a long way when it comes to material, aesthetic, colors.
Sure, the quality and design has come a long way. You have many designs and shapes, tall containers, bowls, very modern styles, and again, classic styles.
So when it comes to watering, do you think these are better compared to terracotta or to glazed?
So these obviously don't breathe because they're plastic.
Okay.
So they'll need a drain hole. That will retain more water, so it'll be less frequent than say a plain terracotta or clay.
And then we have Coco Fiber.
Sure, Coco Fiber is another option. It's a material made from coconut husks, which is a byproduct of the coconut industry. So it's viewed as a renewable resource. They breathe very exceptionally well, and they grow some great plants if you can keep up with the watering.
So that would be a con here. You would have to water a little more just because it's so breathable.
Correct. They dry out much quicker. So in your warmer months, you'll find yourself watering them more often.
Okay. And some might ask, would you line this?
Some people will line it with plastic.
Okay.
And that helps retain water.
Kind of moisture. Okay.
Correct.
And I can see that it's not heavy. And
It's
I would
very
imagine that something like this comes in different sizes, shapes. Pretty much put that in any type of metal frame.
Yeah, in a metal frame, that's something you'll be able to reuse over and over again. At some point, the cocoa liner you will have to replace, but the metal stays obviously in.
Really interesting. And then we can go into what some of the newcomers are, is your grow bags.
Sure, grow bags are relatively new to I guess, the container market.
Correct.
They're made of woven fiber, either synthetic or natural or a blend of both. They breathe extremely well.
And I actually like these just because someone like me will be easier to carry.
That's right.
And much more affordable, I would imagine, from the selection that we have.
Yeah, very
here.
affordable. And they grow superior root systems. You can grow a pretty large plant in a relatively small pot.
Phil, when it comes to containers, would you recommend using a saucer?
Sometimes saucers are completely optional.
Okay.
They might fit an aesthetic that you want.
Okay.
They also serve as a protectant against maybe an expensive floor or something you don't want damaged. It could also offer a small reservoir to hold an additional amount of water.
Well, thank you so much. And these are great options if you're considering going into container garden, everything from size to material to aesthetic. There's an option for you to start your container garden. The second step is choosing the right soil. And this can be overwhelming, but we're going to make this process easy. Phil, what are some of the different options that we can choose from when it comes to container garden?
So choosing a soil is going to be very important, especially working with containers. We need to choose the right soil or potting mix that's going to drain well and be successful and not a failure.
Yes, and there's so many options when it comes to soil, and there are some that we should not use, like?
Sure. So topsoil, for instance, is this beautiful, black, dark, rich soil, and it's exactly what we don't want in a container.
Okay, see, that looks so pretty. I would want to put it in a container.
It is. But when it's in a container, it gets very compacted.
Okay.
Leaves very little airspace for roots, and it has very poor drainage. So if you look at the profile of this, you can see almost no air pockets whatsoever.
Okay.
And that'll lead to root fungus or decline very quickly.
So something like this, if we had to water it, what would happen?
So if we add water to something like topsoil, very quickly, you can see
it doesn't go anywhere.
It's pooling up on top, and it's having a very difficult time percolating through the profile. This is a problem in a container.
Okay.
So we want to avoid this situation.
What about garden bed soil?
Sure. You could call it garden bed soil or topsoil. They're pretty similar.
Pretty similar.
They're going to be pretty dense and have a similar reaction in a container.
So what is something we should be looking for when we purchasing soil for containers?
So something perhaps named potting mix or container mix, potting media. We just don't want to call it dirt because dirt is something we sweep under the rug. We don't want it. Soil grows good plants. So potting soil is going to be a nice blend of ingredients.
Okay.
And that drains well in a container. That's going to be very important and be able to hold moisture as well.
Moisture. And this is an example here of potting mix in a container. As you can see, I mean, it's very obvious that between comparing the two, you know, you can see air, you can see moisture kind of pooling up here.
You have a lot of pore space and channels for water to move through and for roots. So potting mix can contain several ingredients. Not everyone's going to be the same. Just as if I were to ask 5 cooks how to make pasta sauce, I'd get 5 answers probably.
Okay,
so
you have a different sort of way of looking at things.
They all would tell you it's the best as well. So
that's good to know. So what is the foundation of potting mix?
Almost universally, you'll find peat moss mixed as your base, or the tomatoes, I would say, in a pasta sauce. So it's going to make up the most percentage-wise inside of a potting mix. It has a great ability to hold on to water. And
then we have, which I think it's bark.
Yeah, this is pine bark. It could be ground finer than what you see here. And what it does is it's going to loosen the soil. It's not going to allow that to get compact inside a container.
So it gives sort of like a space in there.
Correct.
Okay.
If you were to press on this mix, it just bounces right back.
Okay.
It's not going to get too compact due to the pine bark.
And then we have sand.
Sand, yep. Sand can be added, and as you might expect, sand will aid in drainage. It doesn't hold water, and it is very poor at holding nutrients, which is why peat moss is going to be so important, because peat moss will hold on to your nutrients as well.
So sand is used basically to create tunnels or be able to allow water to drain through the container. Okay.
Yep, that's right.
And then we have...
This is perlite.
Perlite.
Perlite is a volcanic material.
Okay.
It's basically a rock. It's very lightweight.
It's kind of like a marshmallow.
Yep. it holds no water, but it's going to improve drainage.
So ultimately, all these ingredients will be put together, like you said.
In some proportion.
In some proportion.
Yep.
And then you'll get what we will consider potting mix for our container garden. Step number 3 is to choose the right plant. Each gardener has a unique vision for their space. So you need to find a plant that brings your garden dream to life. Phil, what are some of the things that we should consider when we're choosing our plants?
This is one of my favorite parts in the whole gardening process. Things you can think about are the size of the plant this is going to grow to, or the growth habit. Is this plant going to grow upright? Is it going to sprawl? Is it going to climb out of a pot? Color combinations, what each plant offers in color. That could be in the form of a flower, a leaf.
Okay. Size, shape.
Yes, of course. You have coarse textures, fine textures, grassy.
What about wildlife?
So you can also aim to pick plants that target specific wildlife. You might want to see hummingbirds in your backyard. So let's add some plants that bring in hummingbirds. We can use host plants that draw in certain butterflies that will lay their eggs and continue their life cycle.
Life cycle. There's so many options to choose from.
We have plants that give berries and seeds as food for birds. So it can be a lot of fun.
I know we have a lot of native plants here, but why do we think it's important to make sure that we are planting native in small spaces?
Well, in South Florida specifically, you don't have to look very far to understand that development is happening. We're losing habitat to construction and development at an alarming pace. So wildlife is under a lot of stress to survive. They need more habitat. And where do we find habitat in an urban environment? It's on us. It's the homeowners to provide it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a small balcony or your patio or wherever you can find that space, and it makes a difference. We want to create what's called a habitat corridor. If enough people can join the effort and provide small plants and pockets where animals can exist, they can thrive, they can move if they're migratory. If we get enough of them, we make a link to a wider habitat. And a big part of how we achieve that goal is by using native plants.
There's a myth out there that, small garden spaces or container spaces don't make an impact. And I think that's something that we want to stay away from. And we want to encourage that no matter the size, small, large, a little goes a long way, especially with containers.
That's right. You'd be surprised what you can find showing up at your container. Even if you're on a balcony, you'll get some nice visitors.
Now let's go see some natives.
Let's go check them out.
Let's go.
So this is a native honeysuckle called coral honeysuckle.
It's beautiful.
Check out these flowers. So they have coral colored flowers in a tubular form, and they attract many butterflies and even hummingbirds. And it's a vine, as you might be able to tell. It's climbing on a trellis, and that's how you would insert it into your container as well.
You say the word vine. Sometimes vines can be a little overwhelming because they might take over.
Sure.
This is something that we have to consider with this variety?
As far as vines go, this is a very manageable vine.
Okay.
It's not going to tear the stucco off your house. It's not going to grow 8 feet overnight. So it's great for containers.
It's great for containers. When we talk about soil and water needs, how picky can she be?
This is a very versatile plant.
Okay.
It can take some pretty dry conditions and
Okay.
also some moist conditions. And as far as sun goes, it can take full sun like we're exposed to right now,
Okay.
and even a fair bit of shade and still bloom.
And still bloom.
This is Pyramidflower, or you might know it by another name.
Tea bush.
That's right, woolly tea bush or tea bush. So this native shrub comes to us from extreme southern Florida.
Okay.
It's got an abundance of these kind of purpley pinky flowers that are favorites among the lots of pollinators. We even have a native bee buzzing around our
Kind
legs,
of
enjoying the
hanging out. There
flowers.
she is, kind of hanging out.
Even hummingbirds will visit this, butterflies. It's a pretty durable shrub. It can be managed with pruning,
Okay.
and it's tolerant of very dry soils as well. It can take full sun, takes a decent amount of shade as well, and still produces blooms in the shade. Watering is very minimal. They're
Okay.
pretty dry tolerant. They can accept moist conditions as well.
I have personal experience with the tea bush. I let mine sort of grow tall, but I do have to say it's a variety that just brings an abundance amount of wildlife into your space. So if you want to see the bees, this is a great source to have, and it's always blooming. So it's a great variety to put in your container.
So this is a really interesting plant. This is called Quailberry, and this is native to the pinelands of Dade County. It gets its name Quailberry because the bobwhite quails that live there will eat these berries.
And as you can see, they're small little red berries.
They are bright red, they stand out nicely. The leaves are interesting too. And even if you don't have wild quails running around your
Okay.
backyard, you'll be sure to get things like cardinals, mockingbirds, and catbirds that'll feast on these.
Kind of thing. So this is a good plant if you want to attract wildlife.
Absolutely. It's a great ground cover.
Oh.
In a container, it's going to end up towards the front of our container, spilling over the edge.
Kind of spilling over. Okay.
So it adds great texture as well. They like a lot of sunlight.
Okay.
They can take a little bit of filtered sun, and then water, they're extremely dry tolerant.
So it's a good option to have when you're thinking about something short, something in a container, and then to bring the color and feed wildlife.
So take a look at this wildflower.
This is beautiful. You said wildflower.
Right, this is a coastal wildflower native to Florida. It's called Dune or beach sunflower, and it adapts well inland as well. It's got these striking bright yellow flowers, typical of sunflowers.
Yes.
So the beach sunflower or Dune sunflower is going to attract bees, butterflies, and even the old seed heads become a food source for things like painted buntings and other seed-eating birds.
It has a lot of potential when it comes to a variety of things. When it comes to growing, sunlight, water, what do we have to consider?
This
with
prefers a lot of sunlight.
Okay.
Watering is very minimal. It
Okay.
likes it dry, so it lends itself well to a container situation.
When it comes to height, would it get any bigger than what we see here?
The height, I would say maybe 1.5 feet tall, then it kind of collapses on itself, and then it just spreads outwards.
Is it an annual perennial? Would it last throughout like a growing season, or is it something that would just kind of die back down and come back?
Locally, it grows year-round.
Okay.
It does reseed readily, which
Okay.
is a nice thing, I think. So you'll have many young plants as well to
Sort of sprout itself.
sure make friends with. You can hand them out to your neighbors.
And they're beautiful. I mean, I love the sunflower, so this is a great reminder that we have a wildflower, it's native, and it will look beautiful in any container.
This is tropical sage or scarlet sage. That's a native wildflower that we have here in Florida. The blooms are vivid. They cut right through the landscape. They show up really nicely.
This is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, it is a wildflower, so it's something that will do great in container.
Yep, we can use these in containers. They'll grow in full sun, a good amount of shade as well, and still bloom. They're going to attract butterflies, hummingbirds, native bees as well.
So it's a good source if you're interested in bringing wildlife into your space. When it comes to size, would they get any bigger from here?
The flower stalks can get taller.
Okay.
If for some reason you don't want them that high, you can nip those back.
Snip them back.
They're always rebranching and growing new ones.
And they're always, I can see from this collection here, they're always blooming.
It's year-round here, so it's a great addition to just about anything. Have a look at this. This is a beautiful ground cover. This is called swamp twinflower because the flowers are usually born in pairs, and it does enjoy moist soils, as the name might tell you. It gets covered in these dainty little lavender colored flowers, which are a great nectar source for bees, butterflies. It also serves as a host plant for the common buckeye butterfly.
As I can see, it gets very filled, and it sort of could take up a lot of space in a container.
It's a great full ground cover. They can grow in full sun.
Okay.
They take a good amount of shade as well.
And I have the same variety, I just have it sort of a young plant, but this is a good comparison of how big it can get when it comes to filling with space.
Right, this is what you should expect after it's in a container or in the ground for a while.
Phil, can you tell us about something a little different, which I love grasses. Tell us about this beauty here.
Sure, so this is a native grass, and there are several types of love grasses in Florida. This is Elliott's love grass. And it's distinguished by its steel blue leaves, which add a nice pop of color. It does prefer mostly sun, like a lot of grasses do. Water can be moist to somewhat dry. In drier conditions, you might see more browning in the leaves, but the plant does persist.
Does it flower?
So it does flower, like all plants, and it'll get these little seed heads. Yep, and those are a good food source for things like buntings, sparrows, cardinals. So it's a nice wildlife addition. It's nice and tidy. It's very low maintenance. This is beach verbena, another wildflower native to Florida. An interesting fact is its natural range is found only in Florida. That makes it endemic to Florida. So it's kind of our gift to the plant world. So these flowers appear year-round. The habit, as you might be able to tell, is trailing. It spreads along the ground. You're going to have a lot of wildlife interactions in the way of butterflies, even some moths. This plant does appreciate a lot of full sun. That's where it grows best. Watering is well drained to dry. Okay,
so not too much water. We don't want it to set.
After just a few weeks in the container, they spread out pretty quickly, and this is the result you'll get.
And this is a fast-growing plant, I would say.
It is.
Yeah, because I do have a small example of how young they can be, but from this to this is a great contrast when we can see how it fills in beautifully. And of course, a display of flowers is breathtaking.
It's stunning, yes. So I want to highlight another Florida native that's underutilized, and that's the Lyreleaf Sage. So this is Lyreleaf Sage. It's got these nice little flower stems with some light blue flowers. And this is also Lyreleaf Sage. This is a new introduction. It's called Purple Knockout.
I would say it's a knockout when it comes to the color.
It's fantastic. The color really stands out. You've got these deep burgundy leaves, almost Merlot-like. They don't grow very tall. The stems are going to give any height to the plant. The leaves stay pretty short. They prefer lots of sunlight.
Lots of sunlight.
They can take a little bit of shade. Moderate soil moisture. A tad on the dry side is okay.
And I see that we also have a different sense of color when it comes to the flower. There's more blue purplish tone on that side.
It can be a little variable between light blue to almost white. And in both cases, they still attract butterflies and even hummingbirds like most salvias do.
Phil, I have one of my favorite species of milkweed that I see here. Tell us a little about this variety.
Sure, this is a native milkweed, which is really important.
Okay.
Its name is swamp milkweed, and it shows a nice little white flower that's pretty intricately detailed. And as most people know, milkweeds are host plants for monarch butterflies.
And also the queen.
And the soldier.
So this is a great variety to put in a container.
That's correct. It's not going to be your focal point. I like to just kind of hide it in there somewhere because this plant is going to be utilized by caterpillars.
You make a good, interesting point. What happens to this plant is it'll end up becoming a stem because the leaves are actually being eaten up by the caterpillar.
And that's what it's all about. It can take full sun, or in fact, it can grow in quite a bit of shade and do very well.
When it comes to watering,
as the name might imply, swamp milkweed, it does tolerate very wet soils.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be that way. They'll take moderate soils as well.
Step 4 is how to arrange your plants in containers. Phil, how do we go about pairing them together?
So one way to think about it is a method called the thriller, spiller, and filler method. So we're breaking down the plants into several categories. A thriller would be something like a main focal point, something very showy or tall.
Or tall.
Sure.
And here I think we have the honeysuckle.
Yeah, we talked about this. This is the coral honeysuckle.
Okay. And then we have, from what I see here, this is what I would consider your filler.
These are fillers. Yep, we have a state flower of Coreopsis. And this filler here is called Cape Sable Thoroughwort.
Kind of eats up the space of any container.
Right.
And then I see the spiller here is your beach.
Yeah, the beach verbena is back. Here it is spilling out of the container.
Which is beautiful. When you talk about arranging them, would you consider arranging them based on the sun needs or the water needs?
Maybe both.
Maybe both, okay.
So you want plants that all, either work well in the sun or all work well in the shade. You don't want some to struggle while others are thriving.
So pairing them up based on what they need is a good way to sort of keep them together.
Correct.
And then what about the amount of plants that we put in a container?
You'll have to look at the size of the container first. The larger the container, the more you're going to be able to fit in there nicely and safely. The size of the plant you choose as well.
Okay, that matters because you might be able to put in more of their smaller plants.
Right, smaller plants, you'll be able to fit more. Larger plants, you'll have to give more space to allow to grow.
So this is very exciting, but I think you have an exciting demonstration for us.
Sure, I have an empty pot. I've got lots of native plants. Let's see what we can create.
Let's go, let's do this.
We've chosen our pot.
Okay.
It's a glazed ceramic. We've chosen our potting soil. And we're ready to continue with the process. We did make sure we have a drain hole, which is important. So that's the first thing.
We realized that you filled up the container halfway already.
We have it fairly full, and now we're ready to take a look at our native plants and decide where they're going to fit into this.
Okay.
Let's decide a thriller. And I think we found one already.
So the core honeysuckle is going to be our thriller here.
This is going to be our tall main feature. We're going to gently take it out of this container.
Okay.
And because it's taller, we're going to set it towards the back.
So that's sort of a focus point for what we're going to sort of accomplish here.
Right.
This is great. So this will be our thriller here. So now we're going to focus on our filler. So I think we have the tropical sage.
This will make a great filler, even though it could be put in the thriller as well.
Okay. Sort of fill it in there. And then we also have the Lovegrass.
Yeah, this is going to add some extra texture. Now we have some additional color. We'll slide this one on this side.
There is another. Here's your knockout Lyreleaf.
Yeah, this is the purple knockout Lyreleaf. Another color addition.
And last but never not least,
we're going to add that spiller right to the front.
Right to the front.
It's going to cascade beautifully over the side of that container.
And for here, we're going to use the swamp Twinflower.
Yeah, the swamp Twinflower is back. It's a beautiful addition.
Sort of cascade there.
So as you can kind of see, that method works pretty well as putting together a nice display container.
Correct. So we have our thriller, we have our filler,
and our spiller,
which is a great combination, and this method works for all of us. Once you have everything inside the container, our fifth step is maintaining. Phil, do we have any tips for maintaining such a beautiful container?
Sure. So with container gardening, the biggest concern is watering and how often you should water.
It also depends where you place it too, because if it's in full sun, I would imagine that you need a little more water than if it's in the shade.
Correct. The size of the container will also determine how often you water, the size of the plants, seasons, the weather, rainy weather versus middle of summer, hot, dry. All those are factors to consider.
So obviously, we want to make sure that we keep an eye on it to make sure that it's not over drying. And then once in a while, we can grab our little water container and just kind of give it a little splash throughout the weeks. And then we have fertilizer. What do you recommend when it comes to fertilizer?
The easiest option is a slow release. That'll give you the least amount of maintenance with your container. Slow release fertilizers have a low potential to burn. And they can last 3 months or longer with each application.
Oh, that's perfect. So basically I would just apply a little bit, let's say today, and I can wait 3 to 6 months to apply again.
Very easy.
That's actually the easiest way to fertilize. And then the final step, I would imagine, is do we have to mulch?
Mulching is a good idea if you have exposed soil. When the sunlight hits that, it can dry it out very quickly and work like a wick. It can pull all that water out very fast. Simply applying a thin layer of mulch will stop that from happening and reduce the need for watering.
You mentioned soil, so over time, would I have to replace or put more soil in a container like this?
You might find after a long time that your soil is shrinking, and that's normal. The peat moss degrades. So if you find that it sinks a couple inches, you can add a light layer.
Phil, these are fantastic tips. One last question I have. Pruning. Do we have to prune something like this?
Depending what you're using, you may find some plants need a little bit of managing. That's all depending on what you use.
That's great. So like a little haircut.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. And for more tips, check out the resources I've left in the description below. No matter how small your space is, every garden plays a big part in rebuilding our Florida ecosystem. You're creating new habitats for wildlife and increasing our biodiversity. Just imagine a butterfly or a bee finding refuge in your slice of paradise. Remember, when you plant native, you're not just gardening, you're helping Florida thrive. Stay rooted, and I'll see you next time. To keep building your native plant garden, check out the video below. Yes, click right here. I see you right here.